Today's episode is brought to you by the Positively Grateful Resources Bundle. With a video training and dedicated workbook and some bonus personal stories, this Pay What You Want resource will guide you to a gratitude practice that works best for you. You can purchase this at positivelyproductive.com/resources. We've talked about physical and mental clutter many times, but one of the more insidious types of clutter in our everyday lives is digital clutter. Why do I call it insidious? Because you can't see or feel it. You can maybe see it when you open up your email, but for the most part, it hides really well. And it's one of the easiest to collect. You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zaratny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a productivity coach certified in positive psychology and stress management. Join me as we explore ways to live a more proactive, positive life with episodes on productivity, self-awareness, mindset, entrepreneur life, habits and systems, simplicity, fun, and more. I understand overwhelm personally as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife and mom to kids and cats, and as a caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and I'm excited to dig into today's topic with you because it involves one of my favorite topics, decluttering. And it's a topic I've wanted to address for a while as it's an important aspect of decluttering that we frequently talk about here on the podcast. We've talked about physical and mental clutter many times, enough to fill a dedicated decluttering playlist that you can find on the podcast page of the positivelyproductive.com website. But one of the more insidious types of clutter in our everyday lives is digital clutter. So why do I call it insidious? Because you can't see or feel it. You can maybe see it when you open up your email, but for the most part, it hides really well. And it's one of the easiest to collect. We often do it unwittingly. When we buy new clothing or accept a gift from someone that goes in a closet or a drawer, we know what's happening. We know that we need to find a place to put it. Our physical space will often let us know when that becomes too much as well, like when a drawer won't shut, when you have to physically cram something in there. But digital clutter isn't always as obvious because devices function as expected even with large amounts of data. And expanding storage capacity is easy and often cheap now, making it tempting to simply buy more storage instead of addressing the root issue. It's like having the storage facilities for your physical clutter now for digital clutter, but it's even more out of sight and out of mind. And while it may not cost much to keep buying the digital storage that you need, you will still end up paying for digital clutter in other ways. Here's the problem with digital clutter. Like all clutter, it causes stress and delays. Excess digital clutter can cause delays in finding what you need, though I admit it's a little less discernible because we now have such robust keyword searching and more powerful devices. So you can often access what you need a lot faster despite having a lot of information to sort through. But if you've ever found yourself scrolling through a packed email inbox for that message you know someone just sent you recently and you can't find it due to all the other messages that are crowding around it that arrived even more recently, you know what I'm talking about. Digital clutter can cause processing delays, and even if you have enough space, it can drain device batteries faster as well. It can cause a lot of problems behind the scenes that you are not realizing. More than anything, there's a psychological component to digital clutter that must be addressed. It's distracting and it's a constant reminder of unfinished tasks and decisions yet to be made. And the visual stimuli from digital clutter is often worse than other types because there can be multiple levels of data information that are coming at you constantly. You can probably guess what I mean by digital clutter, but consider these as different types that you might find. Unnecessary or duplicate files, old emails and spam, and even too many emails for that matter, unused apps and programs, unused bookmarks, and an abundance of browser tabs open. Yeah, that one hits home. Digital photos and videos, excessive notifications and alerts. There are many more that we could consider, but that is plenty for us to go through today. Now let's consider the places where digital clutter can pile up the most and the easiest. When addressing clutter in a physical space, there's a concept called a hotspot. In your home, for example, a hotspot might be the kitchen counter or island. It's a place where clutter seems to gather because everyone sets things down there. Instead of immediately putting them away, they walk through the door, put stuff there. That's where the mail ends up. That's where you probably find your keys if you're looking for them. It's the place that draws in all the clutter. It's like a clutter magnet. Hotspots exist with digital clutter too, and I will definitely acknowledge the pun here, which I happen to love, because in addition to the term being used by organizers, it is also a tech term as well. Examples of digital clutter hotspots would be the downloads folder. That's probably the biggest one. This is often a dumping ground for files we download temporarily and then forget about, so they kind of become permanent. And if you're like me and love to learn, you're downloading information all the time. And this happens too when you render images and other files in design platforms or even PDFs when you're doing administrative work. The downloads folder, as the name indicates, is the default place to save something locally. So if you don't decide right away where a file will be saved or moved, it will likely languish in the downloads folder. Another hotspot place: photos and videos in your smart device. Photos accumulate rapidly, especially if you have really cute pets and kids like I do. If you're on social media, especially for business, you're encouraged to take lots of photos and videos so that you have things to post. You want to capture processes and tips and behind the scenes. It's encouraged to take a lot of B-roll. So you're constantly capturing, but what are you doing with it and where do you save it? Then add to that all the duplicates from doing things like trying to take a decent selfie, or again, is that just me? That plus automatic backups, and you are quickly in media overwhelm. Another example of a hotspot is browser tabs. So keeping numerous tabs open can create a sense of complete overwhelm and can really slow down your browser as well. This is definitely an area I still struggle because I love to use multiple platforms in conjunction with each other, bounce back and forth. I love to research, so I'm constantly opening up links, but I've definitely found some solutions for that. I figured out for myself, I help my clients with, and I'll be mentioning in the rest of this episode. Another hotspot area: your apps. Apps are plentiful and so often free or really cheap, very easy to download. I, for one, use many of them, and I know how handy they can be. So I'm not anti-app, but it's about intentional use and reviewing them repeatedly so you know that you have the optimal amount, not only for your device, but for your brain. See, the problem comes when they're downloaded, but then not used and then not deleted. And then they're very disorganized. Your collection builds. And then it becomes an out of sight, out of mind thing where these apps are taking up storage space and actually draining your smart device battery. If you check your battery's setting and look for app usage, you might be surprised how much they are drawing from your battery, even though you haven't looked at them in months. Sometimes apps you intend to use also become visual clutter as well. And sometimes they can also be a distraction. I'll use Instagram as an example. When I see that app, I want to click on it and I want to watch reels, right? If you've ever scrolled through multiple apps on multiple pages on your smartphone to try to get to an app that you want, or if you've ever been distracted by a particular app when you were going to look for something else, those are all examples of how apps can create clutter. They can block your concentration. They can block you from positive habits. Okay, I have one more that I want to add. And I was hesitant. Let me preface this by stating that I am a bibliophile. I am an avid book lover. I love to read, and I have a substantial TBR. And for the uninitiated, that means a to be read list. So it pains me to talk about e-readers and iPads and the files on them, but I need to. I have to do my due diligence here. This is most definitely a place where digital clutter can build and build so fast, especially when you have free downloads days. And I promise you, I absolutely take advantage of that. So it's a place that we want to be mindful of, to watch, and at the very least, organize well. There may be some other opportunities in there to consider places where you can borrow books that then you can send back, so you're not maintaining them on your devices. Now let's get into digital decluttering tips. When it comes to dealing with digital clutter, there's a few things you want to consider. You want to approach decluttering in a way that allows you to continue to function within your digital space and ensures that you save the information and the data you need. That may be one of the reasons why we tend to keep digital clutter around for so long, is there's something that we don't want to lose or lose track of. You also need to find the optimal amount to store. It's not always about deleting data. It's a balance of removal versus reorganizing. And in the same way we approach seasonal items in our physical spaces, like holiday decorations, for example, we may approach digital assets. So we may consider that there's something that we want to keep within the storage capacity that we have, but we're not going to access it regularly, maybe only seasonally. So this is specific storage for later access, and it's intentional organizing versus deleting. As you move through your files and apps, you can consider where this might apply and what makes most sense for you. Let's start with unnecessary or duplicate files. You want to open a folder, for example, the downloads folder, review the files for outdated or unnecessarily duplicates, and delete. That's the basic structure here. But your approach may differ depending upon how many files you're looking at, what kinds of parameters you're creating. First of all, you need to consider what the folder is for. You want to keep what's temporary or what's recent or what you need to maybe access quickly. And then the rest needs to have a home that you can also access easily. Remember, when it comes to organizing, it's not a particular look that you're going for. It's your ability to access what you need when you need it. So I recommend with something like the downloads folder that you collect all of the files and maybe place them in a subfolder that is your working decluttering folder, so that when you are downloading other things, as you will be doing at the same time that you work on this decluttering process, you'll be able to distinguish them. And those will be the more current things that you can then review regularly and quickly process. From there, you want to begin reviewing the files for what you really need to save, and then where you're going to relocate these files. For example, if there are photos, those belong in a properly labeled photo folder, either on your hard drive or in something like a Google Drive. Cloud storage can not only help you organize your files, it allows you to access them from various locations and to point to them, so to speak, from different documents and in different apps. And that can be really useful to make access that much easier. I save administrative files for my business in Google Docs that link to those PDFs in my Google Drive. Okay, example is I've trademarked the podcast name Positively Living. And so all of the administrative files related to that and all the information related to that process I have in a Google Doc. There's dates, there's pertinent information from the trademark office, and then I have different reports that I've saved as PDFs that I've linked in the Google Doc, so I can go right to the PDF in the Google Drive folder and access it easily if I need to reference a specific official report. All right, now let's move on to old emails, to spam, things that are outdated that you need to clean out of your email and out of your inbox. So first, you want to search for spam items or specific senders, things that you want to remove, and then you can select a bulk amount and delete. That's the basic process, but Some variations on this theme is you can search by date as well. And email systems like Gmail have different categories, like a promotions tab, for example, that can make it really easy to organize, review, and delete very timely emails. Because the promotions emails are all deadline oriented, it makes it very easy to go back and delete all but the most recent ones without having to think about it too much. So that may be a really easy place for you to start. You can try reverse decluttering here too. You want to move all of your old emails or all the emails that you've had up until this point into a folder, and then you bring back to the inbox only that which you intend to keep or that you need to access currently. It's a great way to start fresh and use your inbox while working on the clutter that's been built. And I will add that many people I know will simply archive instead of delete. There are many instances where deleting just makes sense because you are opening up space. If there's an email where you are trying to do a little CYA and you don't want to get rid of it, then archiving is an excellent use of that. And again, this is going to be a personal choice depending upon what kind of work you do, what kind of communications you have. Next up, let's talk about the unused apps and programs. You want to go into settings on your computer or phone and search for the app list that you have. And then you can review on the smartphone, for example, when you downloaded it and often find when it was last used, which I find really useful because I've checked some apps where I'm like, wow, 2021 was a very good year for this app and I haven't looked at it since. So you can also set a timer, a reminder to do this once a month or once a quarter, just something regular and consistent to develop the habit. You want to review apps to find the ones that you can limit or remove. Another way to technically declutter them is to put lesser used apps in their own subfolder and take them off your main page. This is especially important on a smart device where that main page is the first thing you look at every time you unlock your device. And it's what can potentially distract you. It's what you need to use the most. You want to consider that. That's like your digital prime real estate. So sometimes you can delete an app until you need it again, but deleting apps deletes data that's been built in, and that can be tricky. I think they rely on that sometimes. So it might be easier, if you have the space for it, to shut down notifications, maybe reduce the app's demands, make sure it's not tracking or interacting with other apps, and treat it like a hibernating app. Keep it in a folder you don't normally see, and then you can go back to it. When my family and I traveled to Disney repeatedly for many years, I would keep the Disney app that way. It would keep our information in there, which was really important, but I would shut everything down, turn off all the notifications, and keep it in a folder on my third page and keep it in there until we went on our trip again and then pull it out and kind of bring it back to life, if you will. And now that we really don't visit anymore, it's been officially deleted. Next up, unused bookmarks, browser tabs, things like that. This is harder to have a framework around because it's sort of an as-you-go approach, and I don't know how much it demands of your computer, but it's something to consider in terms of how you're managing and accessing the information that you're searching and in different platforms that you're opening on your laptop. You want to review your bookmarks regularly. Again, it's not about frequency, it's about consistency. So whatever works for you. But you also want to ask yourself, do you even use them? I used to click on favorites all the time, but realized that I never went back to them. So if you want to access certain links, you could save them elsewhere instead. If I'm doing research and I want to refer back to a bunch of sites, I've given up on using the favorites feature, and instead I grab the link and I save it in a dedicated Google Doc for research. I often do this for my podcast episodes. I have a dedicated document for each and every episode where I write out my ideas and my information that I want to share with you, and any research that I do is linked there for reference. As for browser tabs, I may not be the right person to advise you of this because it's still an issue for me. But my recommendation is to close them at least once a week on your computer and smartphone devices, just to clear your cache and kind of reset everything. Just like you need to reboot periodically, you want to clear history, clear the cache, and reset things. So that is a form of like mini temporary decluttering, but it can really help your devices. Again, if you're concerned about losing where you were, you want to be sure to capture the URLs and add them to a list. If you don't want to do something like I do with a Google Doc, you can add them to almost any task management platform instead. I have added specific links to Todoist, which is my task management platform that I prefer to use. You could do any kind of email task. Like I happen to use Gmail, so Google Tasks, but there are a number of different task management systems where you can put a URL in and then click it at the time that you want to go back to that site. Also, you may find it in your history if you haven't cleared that yet, but the safer way to do it is put it somewhere in task management or in a document that can be hyperlinked. Next up, we have digital photos and videos. For digital photos, a type of reverse decluttering may be easiest on a computer. Go through a folder of images and relabel only the keepers. Find the best of a set and star or label them. You can sort by file names, stars, and labels and move them around accordingly. Then after you're done, you can delete what you don't intend to keep. If you want to do it on your smartphone, you may want to consider creating albums for your save only and then sorting per month where you can delete more readily what isn't selected. It's a little harder to organize that way, but that may be something that's easy for you to do when you're sitting in the car waiting for someone. So I would say take a month at a time, make dedicated albums and favorite certain things, and then you can delete the other ones. And you may find, though, if you have a bigger group to work on, that uploading to a laptop will make the culling process easier. All right, let's finish up with excessive notifications and alerts. Remembering that any new platform or app wants you to interact, you will find that the default settings will always be tons of notifications. And that is just pure distraction. It's not like data-heavy distraction, but it's more of a visual clutter that comes up on your devices and constantly gets your attention and distracts you from your tasks at hand. So that is why it's considered clutter. So it's important to check notification settings often, especially when you add a new app or maybe when an app is updated. Double check. You never know. So adjust accordingly to what's comfortable for you. You don't want to miss out, but at the same time, you want to be in control of when you find out the information. What's enough of a notification for you without being too distracting? That's up to you to determine. I personally shut off all notifications and then set myself reminders to go in and review apps regularly when it's convenient for me. As we wrap up this episode, I'm curious, of all the digital clutter mentioned, of all the tips, which one do you want to address most today? What's an easy one that you could start with? What's one area where you would love to start reducing it and feeling better? Is it the email? Is it photos? Is it something else? I would love to know. So be sure to message me your digital decluttering challenges. Let me know your progress. I'm cheering you on. And be sure to ask me questions too. I'm happy to answer them. And remember that digital clutter isn't just visually distracting and stressful for you. It can literally be draining to you and your devices. That's adding insult to injury in a world that is draining enough. Digital clutter is avoidable. You can do something about it. Don't let it add unnecessary challenge and delay to all that you do. Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback or questions, you can find me through the Connect page of the positivelyproductive.com website. And if you're looking for any of the resources mentioned here, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.